Welcome back to the channel, everyone. ThoughtGore here, of course, and today we are taking a look at our final episode of World Police Canada and Australia. Yes, now the reason why this is going to be our final episode is because tomorrow, on June 6th, Hearts of Iron 4 is released. Now, I've already pre-purchased it. I'm just waiting for the release to happen so I can download it and play it. So that's why we have... that's why this is going to be our last episode, because going forward, Rommel and I, or at least myself initially, once Rommel purchases the game, I think he needs maybe a little upgrading on his computer, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to start tomorrow a Hearts of Iron solo game, and then once Rommel gets his shit together, we'll continue along with the two-player Hearts of Iron, or maybe even more players in Hearts of Iron. I think that would be awesome if we had even more players, which, by the way, if any of you are interested in playing Hearts of Iron, especially Hearts of Iron 4, definitely let me know, because it's possible that we might be able to organize a larger game with more people than there's just Rommel and I. I think that would be something quite fun to do. Anyway, getting into our last episode. Now, I'm not going to bring the sound up on the video. I just have a few highlights here from the first game session that Rommel and I played. I had forgotten to take my mic off mute, so if I would have just left the video the way it is, all you would hear is Rommel responding to things that I'm saying, and no one else can hear them. Anyway, our first highlight here that we're moving into is, as the war progressed, basically where we are right now is everything in Europe is calm, quote-unquote calm. So we're in the Pacific. So you can see Rommel, we're zooming in here, has just managed to take a piece of land here that he has been trying to take for quite some time. If you recall from previous episodes, every attempt to take that piece of land resulted in the sinking of Rommel's ships, but he has finally managed to do it. And you can see that his troops have landed, and in fact he's going to be landing some more troops as this progresses here as well onto the island, and there they go. You can see that they just landed. Well, you can catch a quick glimpse there. Now, what Canada is doing while this is happening is I have decided that Canada needs to get involved in the Pacific War. I'd been staying out of the Pacific War for a few reasons. The first reason is I didn't want to have to transport my troops across the Pacific, because if I would have ran into any sort of Japanese resistance, my ships would have all died. It doesn't matter what type of ships I had. The fact is that Japan has a much larger navy, and there is no way that Canada would be able to produce a navy of that size to be able to compete with Japan without having to sacrifice basically everything else in my army. So I wasn't willing to send my navy into there. So what I decided to do instead, keeping in mind that I have troops in Europe, is I'm taking troops from Europe, going through the Mediterranean, through the Suez, around the bottom tip of India, and landing in Singapore. This way, I do not have to cross the Pacific. I'm crossing friendly waters, right? The Suez is all friendly. By the Persian Gulf is basically friendly. The bottom of the Indian Ocean is all friendly. So I don't have to worry about escorting my ships through enemy lines. I'm going through friendly lines. So that's what I'm doing, is I'm getting my troops ready to go over to Singapore. From Singapore, the plan is then to start landing in enemy-occupied territory. You can see that's basically what I'm doing here. I'm getting some ships on the way over to France here. We're going to land in Brest, obviously. And once they are there, I'm going to start moving troops into the Pacific. Now, what I was doing was rotating my troops. So I was taking troops from Europe who were basically just infantry units with some artillery and some engineers, taking those guys, bringing them to the Pacific, and then replacing them in Europe with newly created Canadian divisions consisting of my tanks and mechanized troops. I know, I finally built mechanized troops and I don't even get to use them, but whatever, at least Canada had them. Did better than Australia. You can see the Canadian Pacific Navy, consisting of my two destroyers, are out in the Pacific doing things, making it happen. Now, the reason why I have the two destroyers, it's going to be, when we get to the next episode, the next play session, it's going to be increased to 4 destroyers. The reason why I'm doing this is, one, it's nice to actually have ships in the sea, right? in case like I come across like a lone Japanese destroyer or a small Japanese task force. I'd be able to take them on. But as well, destroyers are nice because they're quick to build. So if I do happen to come across a large Japanese navy, and if my ships get slaughtered, it's not a huge loss losing a few destroyers as opposed to, say, losing my heavy cruiser, which would take years upon years to rebuild. So that's why I only have destroyers in the Pacific at this time. So you can see my troops have finally landed in the Pacific. I managed to take a little bit of an island there. We're checking out Japan proper at this point in time because the Americans are going to be doing some crafty things here shortly. And in fact, you can see American task force. We're looking at one now. We can see another one off the coast of Japan. I don't know what province it is, but whatever. We can see another one there. So the Americans are definitely putting the grip here on the Japanese, which is awesome. The Soviets have declared war against the Japanese, so the Soviets are at war with the Japanese. And in fact, the Soviets, I believe, have taken all of the Korean peninsula at this time. Yeah, we can see it there. There's just the one Busan pocket, if you will, remaining. So that's pretty cool as well. I mean, our allied armies here, we're not going to go into China. If the game would have continued along, I think the Allies would have been hard-pressed to take on those Russians, because it would have been all down to how much support the Americans provide to us as to whether or not we would have actually been able to beat the Russians. Right now in Europe, you know, it's basically the Cold War is basically happening right now, except the Russians have a lot more land than they did historically. They've pushed basically all the way into France. I believe the Russians have Paris, so there's that as well. Now, what you saw me do there was I just queued up some convoy transports. I had been noticing that now that I'm in the Pacific and, you know, need to get convoys into the Pacific to supply some of my supply depots and my troops there, I've noticed that the Japanese have now begun sinking my convoy transports, right? They're doing some convoy raiding and sinking those transports. So I'm just building more to make sure that my supplies continue to get through. You can see that Australia has landed on this island with me here as well. So what is going to happen is Australia, or Rommel, is going to be taking the bottom half of this island, whereas I'm going to be taking these northern provinces and the two just to the immediate south of me as well. I'm not going to bother pronouncing those names because I can't. I'm sure you all know that. So that's what we have going on in the Pacific at this point in time. You can see Rommel's troops are just basically wrapping up there on that little island, the Dutch East Indies. Just wrapping up stuff down there, making sure to take all of the provinces from the Japanese. Once we have this landmass here that we're on, or that my troops are on, we're going to be switching over to the other island over there and start taking some of that land as well. Just, you know, as Rommel had said, it's at this point in time, you know, it's basically a land grab against the Japanese, trying to see how much land we can possibly take from these Japanese before they go down, because they are going down. Like I said, the Americans are poking in and around mainland Japan, so we know that something interesting is about to happen over there. Now that the Allied armies, the British and the Americans, now that those guys, and specifically their navies, are free from Europe, because we don't have to worry about the Soviet Navy right now, right? They're either don't have a Navy or they're building one, so it's going to take years for that to happen. So they don't have to worry about it. So it's finally time where the Allies show up in the Pacific in force. The Americans have a number of task force going on in and around Japan. We saw a few of them. And right now, into this new clip that we're looking at, you can see the American transports landing at Matsuyama, something like that. I don't know. They're landing there, right? So you can see they're duking it out right now with the Japanese defenders, and Rommel and I are watching this intently, hoping that the American landings are a success. Because once the Americans get on mainland Japan, there they go. Success. They managed to do it. You know, victory is all but assured over Japan, because now Japan is losing a whole lot of factories and manpower, and Japan doesn't have that many factories or manpower to begin with. So the fact that they're losing their home island, parts of their home island here, is really, really going to hamper them. Now, if the game were to have progressed, if we would have kept it going longer, what would happen is one of two things. The Americans would either just keep Japan for themselves, and by doing so, they take all of the IC from Japan and it all gets added to their own IC. And the Americans right now are over 500 IC, which is a shit ton. Or the Americans would just simply annex Japan and make Japan a puppet. Now, knowing the computer, it's probably more likely that the Americans would have made Japan a puppet. What that does is then essentially, I mean, you don't get the IC from the puppet nation anymore, but what you do get is their allegiance. So now, any units that they make, you actually get to command as being the puppeteer. You get to command those troops. So that's basically what the Americans are going to try and accomplish. Now, if we take a quick look at Europe, we do see that the Soviets have taken Norway, and they have liberated parts of Germany. That's what that blue blotch is in there. I believe that they were calling that the Eastern Zone of Occupation or something like that. So the Soviets are going to start liberating some of these nations in Europe, making them into puppets. And why they are doing this is, well, I mean, there's a number of reasons for it. The only reason that Rommel and I could come up with is that they're establishing their Iron Curtain, is what they're attempting to do. By doing that, they then, prevent us, the Allies, from having any common borders with them. So it means we have to fight through these smaller states before we can actually get to Russia proper, which is going to help out Russia in the end, because their descent will stay relatively low because they're not actually losing their home provinces, which is, a bit of an advantage there to the Soviets. But whatever. I'm confident that if the game were to continue, that the Allies would prevail eventually. It would probably run into the 60s. Yeah, maybe. I think this game actually, this Darkest Hour, because this is a mod, Darkest Hour, it's a mod. What it is it's essentially the best mods and the best aspects of all of the Hearts of Iron 2 games put into one game. They call it Darkest Hour, a Hearts of Iron game, and this is the game that we have here. Hearts of Iron 3 is crap. Don't even bother with it. Just don't bother. Wait till Monday, get your Hearts of Iron 4 copy. Well worth it. Anyway, you can see that I'm just sort of picking different technologies this time, just trying to keep Canada up there. I don't want to fall too far behind. I know I'm a minor nation, but I'm still trying to make sure that I have, the best equipment that I can possibly have out on the field at this time, right? Just to make sure that if war were to suddenly break out with the Soviets, at the very least I might be able to defend French Canada. That would be awesome. So we can see the American landings are still holding on in Japan, so that's great. The Japanese army has not been able to oust them from Japan proper, which is fantastic. And exactly, it's not quite a surprise. The Japanese typically in this game, if they go with a historical focus, they do not build a large army. Their army consists mostly of a few infantry divisions, which you'll mostly find in China, and then a number of marine divisions, which you would find mostly on Japan proper or out in islands in the Pacific, right? Depending as to whether or not they actually sent their sent their marines out to garrison any islands. So that's basically what Japan does now. It focuses heavily on its navy, obviously. And this is because, if you guys noticed while watching the series, your navy takes forever to build. It is a massive investment for a country to undertake. Building a navy, it takes years to actually build the ship, and then if that ship gets sunk, it is going to take many more years to rebuild the ship, right? Plus you got to keep your research up so that you're producing modern ships, because you don't want to be producing, 45? You don't want to be producing ships from 1920 right now. They will just get destroyed. Naval combat in this game works on positioning. So whoever has the highest level of positioning, meaning can engage the target from the furthest distance away, is usually going to be the fleet that's going to win the naval combat. or the what'll happen is the other fleet is actually going to disengage and try and leave the battle before they lose too many ships. And that's actually what we saw in the Sea of Crete. If you recall, that massacre was our ships. Rommel and our ships just didn't have the range to be able to engage those Italian battleships, which meant that our ships got blown out of the water before they were even able to retreat or fire a single shot back. They were all blown out of the water. So that's essentially how naval combat works. And again, it plays into the reason as to why I'm not bringing the majority of my ships in the Canadian Navy. I'm not bringing them to the Pacific. They are sitting in Halifax, looking good. That's basically what they're doing. So we are quickly coming to the end of this video clip. Now I do have one more game session in the Hearts of Iron series, our Darkest Hour series, World Police. I've got one more game session to put up. I'll probably get that up today, considering Hearts of Iron 4 comes out tomorrow. But I just wanted to get this little highlight reel up here of the first game session. Again, you know, the technical difficulties that we had, or that I guess it was my own stupidity that it resulted in. But anyway, those technical difficulties. So, you know, presents a nice opportunity here just to take a quick look at what happened during the game session. More importantly, though, to mention that this will be the last day of our World Police Canada and Australia series. So we'll have this episode, and then I will put up the next episode. It will be the actual voices, you know, Rommel and I talking it through and whatnot, because you know, I realized my mistake early enough to make sure that the second play session wasn't too badly affected. But you can see that my troops in the Pacific are doing fairly well. I brought over 6 divisions, so 2 groups of 3, and basically just, you know, grabbing up land. That's all I want to do. Get a few more factories, sure, but basically as well what I wanted to make sure that Canada had was lots of resources. Now these islands that we're on are chock full of resources. There are rare materials, there's oil, a lot of stuff. So that's what I'm trying to grab up here. Anyway, thank you for watching. There'll be one more game session that I'll put up later today, and then that will be it for the World Police Canada and Australia series. Thank you guys so much, you know, for sticking around, watching the series through. I know it's not the most popular thing on the show, or on the channel, but to be frank, I love this game. So, you know, this was a great series to make. I had a lot of fun with it. So did Rommel, and like I say, we're not going to stop once this is over. You can expect either, you can expect next week to start seeing Hearts of Iron 4 content, which we'll get up. I'm pretty sure I'm going to start a solo Germany game right off the bat. I think that's going to be amazing. So we'll get that going, and then once Rommel gets, you know, some upgrades to his computer there, specifically a better mic as well, we are then going to start multiplayer Hearts of Iron 4. And keep in mind, if you guys are interested, we could always get a multiplayer Hearts of Iron 4 game going. And I think members of the clan, members of NGA, are also eagerly awaiting Hearts of Iron 4, so it's possible that we might get some of them into the game as well. Anyway, enough rambling. Thank you again for watching the series through. Thank you for the support on the series as well. You know, leave any comments you have for me in the video comment section below. Love reading those and responding back to them. Hit the old like button if you did like today's video. Hit subscribe if you are not a subscriber. And as always, I do hope you enjoy the rest of your day.